They humiliated her by making her sing against her will. The grins that they had on their faces faded, however, as Abby's voice filled the room. They were rendered entirely mute by the lady whom they had previously made fun of. There was a small suburban house in Oak Ridge, Connecticut, and the kitchen windows were open, allowing the morning sunshine to flood in. While she was preparing lunches for her 2 children, Abigail Abby Turner, who was 34 years old, gently hummed. Her tune, despite its lack of volume, has an unexpectedly rich quality that hinted at something very remarkable. Having a knowing look on her face, Emily, who was 12 years old at the time, told her mother, "You're doing it again." Suddenly, Abby came to the realization that she had been singing an aria from Puccini's La Bohème without even recognizing it. She responded with a soft giggle that didn't quite reach her eyes, and said that she had some old habits. The walls of the kitchen had very few hints regarding Abby's history. There was just one little framed portrait hidden amid the photographs of the family. An image of a younger version of Abby playing a grand piano with her eyes closed in concentration and her face lit by a spotlight was shown. It had been 15 years since that photograph had been taken at Westmore Academy of Music, where Abby had previously been considered to be their most promising singing talent back in the day. As soon as he entered the kitchen, Daniel, her husband of 13 years, planted a kiss on her cheek. As he was pouring coffee, he remarked that the child's music instructor had mentioned you once again the day before. She is still unable to accept the fact that you attended Westmore. With a smirk, Abby grinned. After all, it was a different era. It was difficult for their neighbors and friends to comprehend the reasons behind Abby's decision to forego the possibility of becoming a famous person. At the age of 19, she was well on her way to establishing a successful career on a global scale when her father had a stroke that rendered him unable to work. Abby made her decision without any doubt, since her mother had been gone for a long time and she had no siblings to assist her. Family comes first. She often informed Daniel that she had no regrets during peaceful periods, despite the fact that he sometimes caught her watching concerts online, her fingers subconsciously directing along with the accompaniment of the song. Abby paused for a moment that afternoon while she was organizing the mail. An exquisite envelope made of cream was adorned with the gold seal of the Westmore Academy of Music, which was embossed. As she opened it, her hands shook slightly in a nervous manner. Her reading was a celebration of her 25 years of outstanding musical performance. In the interest of the board of directors, we respectfully urge your attendance. Daniel examined her features with great attention. The grand celebration of the anniversary. The invitation was examined by Abby as she nodded. Alumni are being gathered together. It's hard for me to fathom why they would include me. Because you were exceptional, Daniel said in a straightforward manner. She motioned with her head. I was a student who did not complete my education. There is a good chance that they have invited everyone from that period. She positioned the invitation on the counter with the intention of throwing it away at a later time. Within the confines of their little study, Daniel discovered Abby that evening, after the children had gone to sleep. She had her headphones on and was entirely engrossed in the film that she was viewing on her laptop. Even though he could not see the screen, he was able to identify what it was. Prior to her departure, she had given her last recital performance at Westmore. Perhaps 3 times throughout their marriage, he had seen her watching it, and each time, she had done it when she believed that no one was looking. The moment she became aware of him, he advised her to go. Are you going to the gala? I no longer have a place in that global community. A close was made on the laptop. Accolades and notoriety are what such individuals want. But I went in a different direction. Daniel was seated next to her. Perhaps it is not about them after all. It's possible that it's about acknowledging and accepting a facet of yourself that you've been suppressing. Abby discovered that she was opening an antique trunk that was located in their attic later that night. There were journals, programs, and sheet music from her time at Westmore that were included there. In the past, she had marked the notes with such much care, and her fingers traced them. There was a piece that she had created, but it had never been played, and no one other than herself had ever heard it. In the midst of the silence, she hummed a few bars, her recollection of the tune being so clear that she was shocked by its persistence. The song was like reuniting with an old friend. It was familiar but not quite the same. Abby found herself penning a response to the invitation the next morning since she had been invited. "It is really kind of you to include me. It would be a thrill for me to be there." She waited for a few seconds before ultimately pressing the submit button, during which time her finger was hovering over it. Internally, she was experiencing a sensation that was both scary and exciting. A door that had been shut for a very long time was going to be opened again, on the evening of the spring cold that I had not anticipated. Abby's anxiousness was building as Daniel assisted her in getting ready, and he saw it. While he watched her smooth out the plain beige antique dress she had picked, which was the only formal apparel she possessed and had bought many years ago for a cousin's wedding, he reassured her that she looked absolutely stunning for the occasion. While Abby was looking at her mirror, she said, "It's not about how I look. It's about trying to come to terms with a decision I made 15 years ago and the individuals who have never understood it properly." She had maintained a straightforward look, with minimum makeup and hair that was natural and unadorned. Even when she glanced in the mirror, she did not resemble the gorgeous sopranos who were currently performing on the stages that she had previously fantasized of dominating. "Remember that you have nothing to prove to these people," Daniel remarked to her as he dropped her off at the dazzling exterior of the venue in Manhattan. The Westmore Anniversary Gala was held in the Grand Hall, which was adorned with crystal chandeliers and glistened with splendor. The event was attended by a diverse group of individuals, including affluent benefactors, distinguished conductors, and recognized performers. It appeared as if the air itself was infused with a sense of success and aspiration. At the entryway, Abby halted, suddenly experiencing a sensation of being an outsider by every inch. She was surrounded by women who were wearing costly dresses and decorated with jewelry that was worth more than her mortgage. At the Metropolitan Museum of Art, in Carnegie Hall, men dressed in perfect tuxedos discussed forthcoming seasons. "Who is this Abigail Turner? Do I actually look like you?" Despite being in her 70s at the time, Professor Eleanor Winters approached with real affection. With a warm hug, the lady who had previously served as Abby's voice coach greeted her old pupil. She replied, "I never thought I'd see you here," as she looked at Abby's face with a warm and kind expression. What a great and unexpected surprise. The ruckus that was occurring close to the main stage interrupted their discourse to a halt. A gathering had gathered around a tall, distinguished guy who commanded attention with his silver-streaked beard and confident demeanor. Even though she was at a distance, Abby was able to identify him right away. A conductor who was formerly her most formidable rival at Westmore, Lawrence Blackwood is now widely regarded as one of the most renowned conductors in the nation. According to Professor Winters, he has just been appointed as the artistic director of the National Symphony, making him the youngest person in the organization's whole history. As Abby nodded, she recalled the strong competition that they had formerly had, a skill that was only equaled by the fact that they approached music in such different ways. In contrast to her pursuit of emotional truth, Lawrence was bent on achieving mechanical perfection. Abigail Turner, his voice reverberated across the gathering as he became aware of her presence. As heads turned, the conversations became more hushed. Having approached the prodigy who had vanished, he did so with a glass of champagne in his hand and his crew following closely behind. Upon closer inspection, his accomplishments were visible in every contour of his face, in the self-assured posture of his shoulders, and in the manner in which other people submitted to his presence. In a level-headed manner, she acknowledged Laura. "As soon as they informed me that you may be present, I found it difficult to believe." However, his grin did not extend to his eyes. "Considering all of that potential, what have you been doing with it?" In his circle, there was a slight emphasis placed on the last phrase, which caused many individuals to exchange knowing looks with one another. Abby's response was straightforward. "I've been living my life." "Quite charming." Lawrence indicated a lady who was standing next to him. "In this same moment, Olivia has just finished her third tour across the globe, and Marcus has been commissioned by the Vienna Philharmonic." Every introduction seemed like a subtle jab, drawing attention to the several options that Abby had not chosen. As she continued to keep her cool despite the fact that she was feeling more out of place, Abby remarked on how lucky they were. In the course of the evening, Abby found herself surrounded by Lawrence and his fans in the vicinity of the bar, with their inquiries getting more direct. Do you not think about it? The question was posed by a lady who had presented herself as a former classmate, despite the fact that Abby knew very nothing about her. It was the applause and the acknowledgement. Have you ever made an attempt to come back? Another inquired while seeming to be concerned. Abby said, I know what I want to do, as the repetition became more tedious. My family need my presence. Lawrence gave his drink a thoughtful amount of swirling. Abigail, we are all faced with decisions. There are those among us who choose greatness. Abby felt something spark inside her as she heard the subtle hatred in his words. It was not wrath, but rather a sense of regret for the things that he did not comprehend about her choice. At the beginning of the official program, there were remarks that celebrated the heritage of the school. There was a tremendous round of applause that followed each recognizable name at the end of the list of distinguished graduates. In silence, Abby observed the event from her seat at the back table. As the evening's distinguished speaker, Lawrence then ascended the stage and delivered his remarks. He talked about the importance of devotion, sacrifice, and the quest of artistic perfection, and his charm was indisputable because of this. As he surveyed the crowd, he said that talent is meaningless if it is not accompanied by the bravery to pursue it with unwavering determination. At least some of us had the skill. Despite the fact that his eyes discovered Abby among the throng, he did not have the will to see it through. A muttering could be heard across the crowd as a number of individuals cast their gaze in her way. Lawrence went on to say this, his grin becoming more menacing as he spoke. Tonight presents us with a one-of-a-kind chance. There is a member of our group whose voice previously guaranteed stardom, but she ultimately decided to remain unknown. Before reaching Abby, the spotlight spun around in a totally unpredictable manner, revealing her shocked face for everyone to see. Lawrence made the announcement while extending his hand toward the stage. Abigail Turner, he said. Would you be willing to pay us tribute with a song and demonstrate to us what may have been? The request lingered in the air, cloaked in the appearance of an honor, but it was obvious that it was cruel. Faces crowded around her with interested anticipation, some with undisguised schadenfreude, ready to watch the humiliation of a woman who was thought to have spent her talents. A woman was supposed to have wasted her gifts. Although her heart was beating very fast, Abby maintained her composure and remarked, I did not come here to perform. The voice of Lawrence could be heard via the microphone as he urged the person to come immediately. Are you sure you can recall how? Or has the existence of home life rendered even that irrelevant? Laughter spread over certain segments of the crowd. It did not reach all of them, but it was enough to hurt. Indignation was clearly visible on Professor Winter's face as she stood up from her seat, but Abby reached out and gently patted her arm. This moment of ridicule had been building up over the whole evening, maybe for the last 15 years. It was evident that Lawrence was challenging you to perform only one song, unless, of course, you are unable to. Click the subscribe button right now if you are enjoying this tale of a win that was completely unexpected. You won't want to miss out on what comes around the corner. There were dozens of eyes on Abby, some of which were sympathetic, the majority of which were interested, and many of them, including Lawrence's, were shining with anticipation and joy at her predicted failure. The idea of her children at home, particularly Daniel, who had faith in her abilities despite the fact that she had concealed them, came to her mind. The idea of her father, who had passed away, came to her mind. He had never once made her feel bad about the job she had given up in order to take care of him. She spoke quietly as she stood up from her chair and said, very well. It seemed like an interminable journey to get to the stage. A strong contrast was created between her simple beige outfit and the fancy clothes that was all around her. She went by and heard hushed conversations. Is it 15 years without any training? Most likely is no longer capable of hitting a decent note. My poor, he has totally encircled her in his grasp. Lawrence was positioned at the middle of the stage, and his face was one of a faked cordial greeting. He made a gesture of theatrical gallantry by extending his hand. Abigail Turner, after a lapse of 15 years, is making her way back to Westmore, ladies and gentlemen. While at the same time handing her the microphone, he moved in close to her and said, try not to embarrass yourself too thoroughly. Abby positioned herself on the little platform and faced the crowd of people who were looking at her in disbelief. A sudden sensation of suffocation engulfed the magnificent ballroom that was adorned with crystal chandeliers. Lawrence took his place in the first row, reclining back with a smile that conveyed his satisfaction and gave the impression that he had already won. As she stood there still, holding a microphone in her hand, her heart pounded against her ribs. It was a difficult time for her since she was afraid that her voice would completely fail her. Her attention was drawn to an elderly gentleman in the crowd who had a gray beard. While he was muttering something to his friend that caused them both to laugh, he was not trying to hide the fact that he was amused by her suffering. It was a scorching and merciless spotlight there. Abby seemed to temporarily shut her eyes. When she was in that darkness, she was not in a room full of old classmates who were critical. Her children were listening to her sing lullabies while she was in the kitchen. It was her garden, and she was singing to herself as she tended to her flowers. In the hospital room where her father was being treated, she was there, and her voice was a source of solace for him when words were lacking. She has never moved away from music. It had only undergone a transformation, turning into something more personal than something that was performed. Her eyes were opened by her. Her tone was more steady than she thought it was, and she said, "I'll need a pianist now." Lawrence made a contemptuous motion toward the grand piano that was located in the corner of the room where a young musician eagerly seated. "Jonathan is going to be there with you. What are you going to try to accomplish?" Another example of harsh behavior, the term attempting lingered in the air. Abby gazed back at the pianist in a straightforward manner. "You may be familiar with Omio Babino, Caro." Although he was taken aback by her decision, the young guy nodded. Undoubtedly one of the most cherished yet difficult aspects of opera. Abby took a brief look around the room as she waited for him to get ready. A few of the faces displayed sympathy while others conveyed expectation of failure. Lawrence's face continued to display a triumphant look that was hardly hidden. He was under the impression that he had already won this moment, and he saw her as an example of potential that had been squandered. Abby took a few deep breaths as the pianist played the first notes of the piece by herself. The first tone lingered in the atmosphere, unadulterated and unmoving. As a result of the whispered talk, heads that had been bowed began to straighten. There was a pause in Lawrence's arrogant grin. The auditorium was filled with the richness and emotional depth that Abby's voice had, which hushed every whisper that was heard. Certainly, the technological expertise was sufficient to impress. Her command, her impeccable pitch, and her apparently easy movement through the difficult parts were all impressive attributes. Nevertheless, there was something else that really enthralled the crowd. Each letter contained 15 years' worth of concealed feelings. To be happy, to be sad, to love, to sacrifice, and to be pleased. Not only did her voice convey the tale of Puccini's enamored Loretta, but it also conveyed the story of Abby Turner herself, a woman who had chosen a different type of fulfillment than the one that was expected of her. The look on Lawrence's face changed from one of skepticism to one of astonishment as he sat perfectly erect in the front row. At this time, the guy with the gray beard who had only a minute before laughed at her leaned forward, his mouth slightly wide in wonder. A gift that Professor Winters had spotted many years ago was now blossoming to its full potential as she held a handkerchief to her eyes and watched it unfold. Faces all throughout the room reflected the collective knowledge that they were hearing something amazing, not just technically excellent, but genuinely emotional. This realization was recognized by everyone in the room. As Abby got closer to the dramatic climax of the aria, her voice rose so high that it appeared impossible for her to have such a powerful voice given her little stature. The last notes carried with them a combination of technical mastery and heartbreaking passion, and they reverberated around the auditorium with a crystalline beauty. Then there was complete quiet. None of the people moved or breathed for a period of 3 heartbeats. Unbroken was the enchantment that her voice had cast on the situation. As soon as that happened, Professor Winters stood up, tears running freely down her cheeks, and she started applauding. First a few, then dozens, and finally the whole assemblage rose to their feet in a standing ovation. It was as if a tsunami of people followed in its wake. The vast hall was filled with resounding ovation from the audience. As they nodded their heads in acknowledgement, a few of the professional musicians who were there looked to be really affected. As they exchanged meaningful looks with one another, critics who had attended the event as guests were already mentally preparing the pieces they would write. Even the people who were closest to Lawrence broke ranks because they were so engrossed in the actual creative moment that they had experienced. His face was a complicated combination of emotions, adoration, and the breakdown of his story about her. Only Lawrence himself stayed sitting, and his expression mirrored this complex blend of feelings. After hearing the answer, Abby remained still in the middle of the stage, almost as if she were astonished. Despite the fact that the applause was a source of satisfaction, she suddenly became aware of the fact that she had not considered it necessary. For far too long, she had denied herself the opportunity to sing, which was the source of the delight she had been experiencing. After the ovation had finally begun to die down, she started to step down from the stage and gently gave the microphone back to the person in charge of the performance. The voice of a member of the crowd was called out. Marcus Reed, the composer who Lawrence had mentioned before, was the one who emerged. Would you be willing to consider listening to one more, maybe anything by Verdi? Mozart, according to the suggestion of yet another renowned performer. While smiling kindly, Abby shook her head in response. I appreciate that, but I think that's enough. As she made her way back through the throng, people reached out to touch her arm, to congratulate her, and to express their astonishment. Previously, they had been able to see through her, but now they could see her in her whole. After what seemed like an eternity, Lawrence got up from his seat and blocked her way. Despite his own arrogance, he spoke with a more subdued tone and addressed Abigail. It was completely unknown to me that you had kept such exemplary performance. Remaining cool, she looked at him. I have never been able to convey to you, Lawrence, what music means to me. There was never any concern about perfection. He urged us to have a conversation. Due to the fact that you have such a voice, even after all these years, there are chances and connections that I might assist you in making. Underneath his words, there was a real offer, but there was also an effort to retake control, to place himself as the gatekeeper to a world that she had apparently lost. The grin that Abby wore was soft yet resolute. Although I am grateful for the idea, I am living a life that I adore. The presence of music has always been a component of it, but not in the manner that you comprehend it. The rest of the evening passed in a manner most reminiscent of a dream. Abby was approached by those who had disregarded her a few hours ago, and they inquired about her life, her decisions, and the fact that she had concealed such brilliance for such a long time before. With a courteous response, she did not offer any apologies for the course of action that she had chosen. Some people understood, while others obviously did not, and they just saw what they saw to be an opportunity that was lost. She was located beside the great windows that looked out over the city lights, and Professor Winters discovered her as the throng started to thin out. The old lady added, I have always wondered if you have ever regretted the decision you made. The question was given great consideration by Abby. Although I was saddened by the fact that I had to give up music as I knew it at the time, I never gave up on my family. An observation made by Professor Winters was that you never really lost it. You have developed your voice in ways that it would not have if you had followed the route that was expected of you. There is a depth there, something real that many singers who are technically brilliant never seem to accomplish when they sing. Again composed than before, Lawrence approached once again, this time accompanied by 2 members of the board of directors of the New York Philharmonic. In a tone that was professional and courteous, he said that we are now exploring the potential of holding a special showcase the following month. In addition, one of the board members eagerly remarked, featured alumni, you would be a highlight, a literal overnight sensation. Abby was able to perceive the offer for what it really was, a gateway to the road that she had previously abandoned. The temptation was more powerful than she had anticipated it to be. Although she started out with a cautious tone, I am pleased, but my life is in Connecticut. My own family? Lawrence stepped forward and said, arrangements can be made. We are able to accommodate your home duties by scheduling rehearsals on the weekends. Abby was able to understand things better as a result of the subtle disdain in his approach. The responsibilities that you refer to as my household commitments are not burdens that I try to avoid, Lawrence. They are decisions that I wholeheartedly accept. When she stared at him, she looked him in the eyes. When was the last time you sung for the sole purpose of experiencing the pleasure of singing without regard to an audience, critics, or public opinion? The answer was already conveyed by his look before he had the chance to construct a response. To continue, she stated in a kind manner, I do not require spotlights or reviews to affirm that music matters in my life. However, I am grateful to you for bringing to my attention the fact that I have been keeping my voice to myself much too often. Professor Winters shoved a business card into her palm as she was getting ready to leave the room. She said that the community music school located in the downtown area is seeking for a singing teacher. It is something to think about doing on 2 nights every week. At your discretion. When Abby looked at the card, she felt a warm feeling wash over her as she contemplated the possibility of assisting others in discovering their own voice. She suggested that I may simply go ahead and do it. As I stepped outside, the air of the spring night seemed clean and energizing. During the time that she was waiting for her automobile, Abby quietly hummed to herself. It wasn't Puccini or Verdi, rather, it was a straightforward tune that she had written for her children many years ago. When she arrived at her house, Daniel was already up and waiting for her, and his eager look prompted him to ask the question before he could. When she was seated next to him, she said that it was enlightening. She related the events that transpired that evening, including the first dismissal, Lawrence's public challenge, and the subsequent events. During the course of her description of the performance, her eyes lit up with a renewed sense of enthusiasm. Ultimately, she came to the conclusion that they provided me with opportunity, a shot at what may have been. In addition, Daniel inquired with great attention and I became aware of something. His hand was taken by Abby. What may have been is not something I want. As it is, I would want it to have a little bit more music in it. After a period of 2 months, Abby was seeing the area that would soon be transformed into Turner Vocal Studio while standing in a shop that had been refurbished in their town. On a bi-weekly basis, she would instruct both children and adults on how to recognize and embrace their own voice. On her desk was a framed review from the Westmore Gala that had been extensively disseminated in the world of music. The assessment described a voice that had an uncommonly honest emotional expression. But what was even more significant was the composition notebook that was sitting next to it. It was full of fresh music that she was writing. Songs that combined her classical expertise with the life lessons she had learned while she was away from the world of public attention. The innate skill that Abby had at the same age was shown by her daughter Emily, who was playing the piano in the cramped practice room. Emily was plucking out a different tune. "Mom, Emily phoned me. Would you be able to assist me with this step?" When Abby realized that her legacy would not be defined in spectacular performances or critical acclaim, she smiled. She understood that her legacy would be measured in times like this, when she shared the sheer pleasure of music with the people she loved the most. In the beginning, she started singing, and her voice filled the plain room with the same amount of beauty and passion as it had filled the grand hall with its crystal chandeliers. She pondered that some decisions were not about what one would give up, but rather about what one would get instead. Let us know about your experience. What are you seeing from it this same moment? Please click the subscribe button if you found this story of rediscovery to be emotionally moving. We invite you to become a part of our community of storytellers and listeners who believe in the power of unexpected victories and second chances. Who or what aspects of yourself have you neglected in order to keep up with the inexorable march of life? What are the talents and passions that lay dormant inside you, quietly waiting for their opportunity to shine once more? Despite its title, Abby's Quest is not only a tale of musical salvation. It acts as a mirror reflecting back the decisions that each of us makes when reality requires us to make concessions. Those skills that we put on hold and those aspirations that we put off indefinitely do not disappear into thin air. As we go about our daily lives, they continue to exist, silently beating like a second heart underneath our existence. Give it some thought. How many of us have completely given up parts of ourselves in order to satisfy the pressures that our life have placed on us? The painter who put her brushes away in order to focus on raising her family. This is the author whose books are only written in the spare time of their hectic days. When a musician's instrument is left in a neglected corner, it begins to collect dust. When we recover these hidden elements of ourselves, however, they emerge not reduced but altered. This is what Abby found and what her experience on that platform revealed the truth about. They are more genuine than they ever could have been before, having been enriched by the journey of life and deepened by the hardships we have faced. In the gentle light of the tales that have been passed down within our community, we have been witnesses to innumerable instances of rediscovery. After a 40-year hiatus, the retired educator returned to the world of poetry. After a lifetime of stillness, the grandpa finally decided to take up his saxophone and play it. The lady who, at the age of 73, was finally able to publish her first book. There is no sense of remorse in these tales. In other words, they are evidence of the tenacious soul that defies the attempt to forever quiet it. They serve as a reminder that it is never too late to allow your genuine voice have weight in the world. When it comes to surprising the world with the talents you've been keeping concealed, it is never too late. In the event that Abby's journey has rekindled something within you, whether it be a long-lost passion or a skill that has been neglected due to the responsibilities of life, you should respect that emotion. It is a spiritual whisper from the person you used to be to the person you are going to be in the future. As we wait for our next voyage together, keep in mind that the most powerful note is sometimes the one that comes after a prolonged period of stillness.